about the theory of the firm and the pirate code. So the reading for today was the Pete Leeson book, The Invisible Hook, obviously after The Invisible Hand, but because it's pirates, The Invisible Hook. Now, I've spent quite a bit of time telling you about how markets work when they work, and about how the price system allocates resources. It moves resources to higher valued uses. Price signals scarcity, it organizes production through profit, and it encourages innovation because people hope to capture some part of the value that they've created. But wait, if markets are so great, why are there firms? Spent all this time talking about how markets are so great. Relatively few people decide how they're going to spend their day by looking at prices. Most people go to their job, and either their tasks are already defined, or they'll be given tasks by a boss. Well, this is a command system, not a price system. So, by and large, the price system doesn't do what I said. What actually happens is that people work in command system called firms. Why? One of my dissertation advisors was Douglas C. North. Douglas North won the Nobel Prize in 1993. He died, I think, on Wednesday. He was 95 years old. When I was in graduate school, I was doing my PhD thesis defense. And Doug, as one of my advisors, asked me a question and said, all right, explain this. What's the answer? And I was on the board drawing equations because I was an economist. And Doug put up his hand and moved it as if he were talking to a pitiful small child and said in a pathetic voice, Mike, Mike, Mike. The answer is transactions costs. And I later realized it didn't matter what the question was. The answer for Doug was transactions costs. And he was right. And that's the answer to this question. Why are there firms? Well, the answer is there's transactions cost in using the price system. I have talked about the system that was used to make pins. So Adam Smith's pin factory example. Adam Smith talked about there being 18 different steps in the process to make pins. Well, if somebody finished the first step, which was drawing the wire and cutting it, did he then put it on eBay, or the 18th century version of eBay, to sell it to someone else? He did not. He passed it on to the next person in line. The price system had nothing to do with that transaction. Instead, in a production line, you hire all 18 people and say, now go make pins. Well, why wouldn't the first guy who had drawn out the pin and cut it sell it? And the answer is transactions cost, because that's the answer to every important question according to Doug. So this is my homage to Doug. If you die at 95, that's okay. He had a long and good life. But the answer is transactions cost. And so anytime somebody asks a question about economics, the first thing you should think about is, well, it would be too expensive to do that. That's a really fundamental insight. It's costly to use the price system. It's costly to use the price system. Prices, arriving at prices, negotiating prices, and enforcing contracts is not costly, costless. It is costly. So that means that everything that I've said about price has assumed transactions costs are either low or negligible. They're small enough we don't have to worry about it. Well, that's not actually true, and that's why there are firms. Firms are an explicit suppression of the kind of market mechanism that I've been talking about. Firms face a make or buy decision. Firms face a make or buy decision. That is, I can make this or I can buy it. If I make it, then I'm organizing this transaction internally to the firm. If I buy it, I'm acquiring it using the price mechanism. Does everybody see the distinction? Make is inside the firm. Buy is using the price mechanism. How do you decide what to make and what to buy? Well, in a way, that's the key problem that faces any manager. Many of the problems that face any manager in a firm come down to the make or buy decision. We need garbage cans. Should we make those or buy them? Well, unless you make garbage cans already, you should probably buy them. We need new laptops for our sales force. Again, you should probably buy those. We want to sell cars. Well, buying them and reselling them may not work as well as making them yourself if you're an automobile company. How about transmissions? Well, you might buy those or you might make them. How about tires? It's unlikely that an automobile company is going to make its own tires. They're better off buying those. It's a separate production process and it's easy to put tires on the car. So the decision that you have to make comes down to what should we make and what should we buy. And the answer to the question what we should make and what we should buy is transactions costs. Which one does it cost us more to acquire separate from whatever the costs of production are? Now, economists usually talk about widgets or something the actual making of which is not important. That's because economists are often not interested in transactions cost. And although my advisor, Doug North, won the Nobel Prize, he was not really accepted by economists very well because economists are more interested in price. But this is a class in political economy, and so we're interested also in organization. So firms and government agencies are ways of organizing production in a way that standard economics doesn't handle very well. So the problem of the pin factory shows you that it's the suppression of the price mechanism that causes a lot of the profits for the firm. The reason is I can make a lot more pins by hiring 18 people and training each of them to make pins in each of these different steps. So Smith observed that there might be two different ways to make pins. One is craft style, that is, each worker does all the steps. How many pins could you make in a day? They bring in wire and you have to put them in boxes. You might be able to make 50. There's a bunch of steps. If there were two of you, you could divide it up. Craft or artisanal production means each of us make the whole thing. That used to be the way we would make shoes. There's a lot of things we still produce that way. Bakeries, sort of mom and pop bakeries that make pies and cakes, still tend to be artisanal or craft style. The alternative is industrial production. Industrial production uses division of labor. That's Smith's insight. So if you have 18 artisans making pins, and you have 18 people working on a production line, who makes more pins? Which approach? The production line makes 1,000 times as many pins because they've divided the tasks up. Each person learns more about the task, they practice it, which Adam Smith called dexterity, and they think of ways to make particular capital items called tools that increase their productivity. Over time, dividing up steps so that you develop dexterity and you invent tools dramatically improves the production process. So 10 people in a production line could probably make a lot more pins than 18 artisans doing the whole process themselves. That's the reason that there are firms. Division of labor works better in a command system than in a price system. It seems so obvious but it's actually a fundamental insight. Division of labor causes enormous increases in productions, but it can only be managed in a firm setting. So, specialization is the process by which division of labor occurs as different workers specialize in specific tasks over time. Workers who specialize become much more skilled. Increasing job specialization increases their efficiency and leads to higher organizational performance. They learn how to do it better. They learn how to make tools. They learn skills, which, as I said, Smith called dexterity. Their experience makes them less nervous about it. They can just do it through muscle memory. And they become experts in particular parts of the production process. So if I want to hire someone who is an expert at putting the heads on pins, there are people that have been doing that for years. If I'm in Hollywood and I want to find someone who's an expert in a particular kind of sound and editing, I can do that. So specialization means that we have human interchangeable parts. You learned in high school that one of the things that made the Industrial Revolution so successful was interchangeable parts. But in a firm, there are human interchangeable parts. Now, there's a downside to that, and Smith recognized that. It means we're treating labor as a commodity. We're treating labor as a commodity. We're interested in the person not as a person, but as an expert who has a particular skill. However, if you're an expert, you earn a lot more money than if you're not. So the way to think of this is 100 guys with sticks don't make much money hiring ditches. 10 guys with shovels can make a fair amount of money digging ditches. One guy with a backhoe makes a really good living digging ditches, and the one backhoe is better than the 100 guys with sticks. So tools, capital, and human interchangeable parts are a big part of this production revolution. If I say I need a backhoe operator and a backhoe, it's clear what expertise in backhoe operation is. Higher transaction costs in the price system imply larger firms. The higher transactions cost, the larger our firms. If transactions cost fall, firms can be smaller. Why? Because they can buy more and make less. The make or buy margin is determined by transactions costs. If transactions cost fall, they can buy more and just specialize in making what their real value proposition is, the thing they really make profits from. Well, transactions costs have fallen dramatically because of the internet and our ability to outsource trust. So if you want to buy something on eBay, you might even buy a car on eBay. You don't know the person, but the person has sold a bunch of cars. They have a 9.8 out of 10 rating, and they have 2,000 evaluations. I don't need to know the person because they have a reputation that's been created by the eBay software that reduces the transactions cost of using the price system. So in many ways, firms are going to shrink because of this revolution, with one caveat. Network economies mean that firms are going to grow larger. What's a network economy? A network economy is when the fact that other people use this make it more attractive to me. There might be 8, 10, 12 different companies that produce something like Facebook. But if you're on a different system, it's hard for you to share pictures or look at cat videos on the other system. If everybody else is on Facebook, you're going to be on Facebook too. If everybody else uses Microsoft Word, you're going to use Microsoft Word. So the internet the information economy also increases network economies. So there's two competing effects. One is reductions in transactions cost means that firm can be smaller in the sense that they have fewer employees. Network economies, though, mean that the market share of the firm will be larger because everybody wants to use what everybody else uses. So Facebook actually has relatively few employees. Google has relatively few employees considering how many people use that software. So the firm is both small and large. Facebook and Google don't make their own computers. They buy them. They buy almost everything. They really just make software, but everybody uses that software. But there is a more interesting story, and that's pirates. The reason I wanted to set this up is that you may not have thought of pirate ships as firms. But we're all about the fun here in the political science department. I actually had considered talking like a pirate and thought better of that. So assume the whole talk like a pirate thing. Pirate ship is a specialized kind of firm. Individuals by themselves could not capture ships, couldn't operate ships. So what a pirate ship is trying to do is capture prizes. And a prize is a boat that's full of valuable stuff. So they're thieves, but they need to organize in a group in order to commit their thievery. Now, suppose that pirates make an agreement and someone violates it. Can they call the police? Well, the police hope they will, but it will go ill for them. Wait, one of the pirates stole something for somebody else? Where are you? We'll be right there. You can't get the police to enforce criminal agreements. But having those criminal agreements is an enormous advantage because you need dozens of people to operate a large sailing ship and to have the military force to be able to take over a somewhat defended prize. So how did pirates solve this problem? Well, there's the code. But wait, we just said it's not enforceable. The code has to be somehow self-enforcing. And why just guidelines? Well, you may remember this scene.
You return your soul is not part of our negotiations or our agreement, so it must do nothing. And secondly, you must be a pirate for the Pirates Code. You imply that you're not. And thirdly, the code is more than what you call guidelines, the natural rules. Welcome aboard the Black Pearl, Miss Turner.
You can't see it very well, but Miss Turner has declared her right of parley, and the goons find her in the closet, and that means that they can't hurt her. They take her to the captain. She makes certain arrangements with him. She's on the Pearl, the Black Pearl, and demands to be taken back to shore because the code says that that's what the captain must do. And so he turns around and says, first, that wasn't part of our agreement, so the code says nothing. Second, you have to be a pirate for the pirate code to apply, and you're not. Third, the code is really more what you call guidelines. Now, this is not a documentary, I realize. It is a fictional movie. But their use of the code is actually pretty cool. It really was more like guidelines. The code was a set of rules that many pirates followed. There's 3 problems that pirates really face. I'm going to go through details, but there's 3 main problems that pirates face. One is preventing the captain or whoever is in charge from being predatory. The problem with having a captain is that the captain may be cruel and abusive. In fact, many people became pirates because the captains of merchant ships were so cruel and abusive. So the chief recruiting ground for pirates was merchant ships where the sailors had been pressed into service, they weren't paid very much, and the captain was abusive. So one problem is controlling predatory leadership. The second is to induce effort on the part of pirates. That is, we want to make sure that if we're attacking a ship, you don't just stay downstairs drunk. You're there ready with your cutlass and pistol, and you're aggressive in attacking. Because if only a few of us attack, it won't work. We have 40 or 50 pirates, all of us attack, we'll probably be able to take over a merchant ship that has a crew of 20 and it's lightly armed. But I figure there's 40 of us, 39 will still do, I'll hang back, everybody hangs back, those people end up getting hurt, we're not successful in taking the prize. The third problem let me put it this way. If I'm a pirate, what I would like to do is to appear so fearsome, so evil, so insane that nobody wants to fight me. And if I can do that, how much will I have to fight? None. If I can make an arrangement that increases the cost and benefit between resistance and surrender, I will always be able to get the prize to surrender, which means I'll never have to fight. So the most important part of the pirate code is give good quarter when asked. Give good quarter when asked. Quarter means you treat the captives well. You take their stuff. You're a pirate. You take their stuff, but you treat them well. No assault, no rape, no torture. You feed them and you put them ashore. The captain in particular you treat as a gentleman. However, if the ship resists, you kill most of them and torture the rest. So it hinges on resistance. You want to make sure that if the crew strike their colors, they've got a flag up on the mast. Pirate ship comes over the horizon, comes up close to them. They strike their colors, we give up. You treat them well. They keep their colors up, they resist, you treat them horribly. If you get a reputation for being consistent, for giving good quarter when asked, you make yourself a much more successful economic enterprise. You never have to fight, you don't get hurt, and anybody who sees you says, look, I'll give up because you're crazy. So those are the big three. Those are the three problems that pirates have to solve. Let's see how they did it. This sounds like Darth Vader, I realize. The Jolly Roger actually derives from the French phrase Joli Rouge, which means red flag. The red flag means no quarter. The red flag means we will fight to the death. Pirate flags come from an anglicization of Joli Rouge. The Jolly Roger is a sign we are crazy, and if you resist, we will kill most of you and torture the rest. So if you see this, you should give up. So it's designed to inspire terror, both because of the symbols it contains and because of what it means. So the Jolly Rouge meant no quarter, we will take no prisoners. The Jolly Roger means we would love to take prisoners, but if you fight, it'll go badly for you. So instead of a pretty red flag, which meant no quarter or fight to the death with no prisoners, we get a Jolly Roger. So pirates cultivated a reputation as vicious killers who would stop at nothing. If they attack, they're going to rape and torture their victims. They're chaotic, unpredictable, unorganized. That's basically all media. They were cultivating that reputation as a means of reducing the cost of the piratical enterprise. So if you actually do research about how they organized themselves, which is what Pete Leeson did in that book, it turns out they weren't crazy. Have you ever heard of the game of chicken? So in the game of chicken, you have two cars, half a mile apart. And one of them should be James Dean in a 1955 convertible. And the other one is some schmo. And they drive towards each other. And of course, there's many people, and in the movies it's always some of them women, who are going to judge the manhood of these two guys by how they behave. And at the last minute, the schmo always swerves, because James Dean is crazy. I can't win a chicken game with him. He's nuts. Well, if you can cultivate a reputation for being crazy, that's rational. It is rational to cultivate a reputation for being crazy. Because if I think you can barely contain your tendency toward violence, but you will if I give up, then you rationally never have to fight. So a crazy fighter person has to fight less than an apparently rational person who hasn't rationally cultivated this reputation for insanity. So all of this is a chicken game. The pirates are trying to say, we really want to kill, rape, and torture. But if you give up, we won't. Now, how would this be enforced? And the answer is, and this is so cool, other pirates did it. If you, a pirate ship, were reported to have attacked a ship that gave good quarter, that struck its colors, other pirate ships would hunt you down and attack you because you're messing with their cheddar. You are taking their money. They've got to try to enforce that. Other pirate ships would attack pirate ships that violated this norm of give good quarter when asked, which is remarkable. So there is an enforcement mechanism. These were, after all, groups of men, for the most part, who specialized in violence. They were fully capable of being violent, but they would prefer not to be violent. So if you violated this rule, it meant that everyone's promise to give good quarter when asked was less plausible. And so it was enforced, in some cases quite aggressively. So a famous pirate, Blackbeard, whose name may have been Edward Teach, and he operated in the waters off of North Carolina, also in much of the Caribbean, but Edward Teach, or Blackbeard, is one of our homegrown state pirates. He was apparently, or at least he cultivated, having been a minor gentleman, he braided his beard and put candles and firecrackers in his hair. And he looked like a crazy person, but he's wearing the clothing of a gentleman. So I'll treat you like a gentleman if you give up. He's obviously giving mixed signals. I'll treat you like a gentleman if you give up, but my hair's on fire. So you need to decide pretty soon, because I'm going to kick your butt. So he's trying to give both of those signals. The people who report on him say he was an extremely competent leader, was not insane, but intentionally cultivated this way of looking and acting. So he was a privateer for the British, spying on French ships and sometimes taking enemy ships. So a privateer is a pirate ship that has letters of marque. Privateer is a pirate ship that has letters of marque. That is, they're a mercenary. So if I have French letters of marque, it means that I'm basically a French naval ship. And when I take a prize, I turn over part of it. But from the French perspective, ships of the line are pretty expensive. Big battleships are expensive. If I can hire mercenaries, and the mercenaries pay themselves out of the value from the prizes that they take, that's both cheap and effective. I now have a way of attacking their merchant shipping, and it costs me nothing. And they're more or less protected by law. It might be that the Spanish, if they captured them, would treat them as pirates, but they say, no, I've got letters of marque. I'm actually a mercenary. But many privateers would go in and out of piracy. They had letters of marque, they expire, they would say, this is actually pretty cool, the pirate's life for me. Said I wasn't going to say it, but yo-ho. So, another source of pirate recruitment was privateers. So merchant ships who had bad captains and privateers often became captains. Pirates, I'm sorry. So becoming a privateer was the first step for Blackbeard. And does that look at all familiar to you, that pose? Well, Johnny Depp apparently actually had two people that he very intentionally used in his design of the costumes and mannerisms for Captain Jack Sparrow. One of them was Blackbeard, the other was Keith Richards. I mean, this sort of affectedly effeminate pose by someone who is cultivating a reputation for violence. If you looked at the movements that Johnny Depp would use, it's really interesting. It was an interesting historical problem of how you try to match this mixed signal. I am a gentleman and I will treat you well if you give good quarter. Unfortunately, I'm completely insane and I will cut you to pieces while you're alive if you resist. You get to pick. Make the right choice. It's clear why you would adopt this as a tactic. Profit. Profit. It's a profit maximizing strategy. So his ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, is one of the largest pirate ships ever. Apparently it left Africa with a load of gold dust, silver, jewels, and slaves. It was captured by Blackbeard during his voyage. A number of the people who had been slaves became pirates. It's not as if there wasn't racial prejudice, but if you were strong and loyal, pirates were much more open, because having a useful crew member was more valuable than exercising racial prejudice. So merchant ships almost never had black crew. Pirates often did have some because it was way better than being a slave. The ship could hold up to 300 tons, was armed with 40 cannon, had a crew of 150. It's a pretty prodigious fighting force. That ship alone is enough to take on pretty much any 2 merchant ships. Not a warship, but any 2 merchant ships. Pirate ships, as a rule, were smaller than most warships. They needed to be fast, and they needed to escape by being able to go over coastal shoals. So big battleships had a deep draft. Pirate ships were pretty small. In a way, the question of scale is a problem that the firm makes. How big should the pirate firm be? And the answer is transactions costs. Y'all are killing me. Well, how much does it take to be able to sail the ship, use the weapons in a way that's effective? There are pirates today. Some of y'all may have seen the movie Captain Phillips. Again, not a documentary, although it was based on real events. How large were the pirate ships in the Indian Ocean off the coast of Somalia? Pretty small. They're basically just really fast motor launches with 5 or 6 pirates, and they had grenade launchers and rocket launchers. So the difference is these ships can be really fast because they have internal combustion engines, and grenade launchers and rocket launchers are extremely powerful weapons even at a considerable distance. So the Somali pirates also cultivate a reputation for being wild and dangerous. But the Somalian capital, Mogadishu, has more ethnic restaurants than any other city its size, because pirates want to treat their captives well while they're holding them for ransom. So you can get absolutely any kind of food that you want in Mogadishu. And people who are ransomed after being taken hostage by these pirates report on being treated well so long as they didn't resist. Now, I'm not sure that the pirates of Mogadishu read books about pirates of the Caribbean. In fact, they probably didn't. It just turns out that's the profit-maximizing tactic. If the other side resists, destroy them. If they cooperate, treat them well, because it increases the difference between the cost and benefits between resisting and not resisting. And if they don't resist, I mean, after all, these are sailors on some big oil tanker. They don't really care about the oil tanker. They would prefer not to resist. But if they think you're going to torture them and treat them badly, they'll resist. They're trying to save their lives. If it's just business, they'll be taken hostage and given reasonably good food and accommodation. It's fine with them. They'll give up. So exactly the same tactics are used today, and for the same reason. Profit. So the Queen Anne's Revenge wrecked in June 1718 at Beaufort Inlet. The crew abandoned the ship. It is believed that it still had quite a bit of treasure aboard, and so a lot of people look for it. It's not obvious that that's true, but it's one of the things that diving companies, if you go diving off the coast of North Carolina, will sort of spice this up with. The Outer Banks, the islands off the coast of North Carolina, were just terrific for pirates. The North Carolina coastline is so complicated. If you had a shallow draft ship, there's hundreds and hundreds of places you could hide indefinitely. This was Blackbeard's Jolly Roger. So you've got a scary skeleton, a heart dripping blood, a spear, sort of a devil thing going on, and he's drinking. So pretty scary, you should give up. So not a traditional Jolly Roger. Well, let's contrast, and this is from Leeson's book, let's contrast merchant ship organization with pirate ship organization. A merchant owns the ship. They delegate the sailing to a captain and crew. There's an incentive problem. How do we convince the crew of the ship to work for the interest of the merchant? Because they don't own the ship. They don't get any of the profits. Well, you appoint a captain who has full control over the ship. And you give the captain monetary or social incentives. The second problem is captain predation, though. That is, the captain abuses the crew. If he has absolute power, he'll abuse the crew. Well, captains had reputations. So you tried not to sign on if the captain was a bad person. But they would sometimes basically kidnap sailors. So merchant ships were pretty bad. Merchant ships are a pretty bad place. And if the captain was bad, you might as well go pirate. Pirates did not have the incentive problems because the pirates owned their own ship. It's a kind of worker democracy. The pirates, in effect, owned their own ship. They all had a share. Now, admittedly, it was so they could steal, but it means that they have property rights in stuff they stole from other people. They couldn't use the common law, though, to enforce agreement, and they couldn't use government backup. So, to organize their banditry, pirates needed to adapt their organization. They need to find mechanisms to prevent internal predation, minimize crew conflicts, and maximize their profits. So there's two pillars of this. One, remarkably, is democracy. We think of the pirate as being sort of under the thumb of a tyrannical captain, but that's really, really not true. And in fact, and I put this up on the later slides in this slide deck, I have a paraphrase of parts of the code. How was mutiny defined? Well, on a merchant ship, mutiny is when the crew rises against the captain. On a merchant ship, mutiny is when the crew rises against the captain. On a pirate ship, mutiny is when the crew votes to remove the captain and he refuses. So anytime when you're not in actual combat, you could have a vote. And if a majority opposed the current captain, he had to go back to being a crew member. If he refused, that was mutiny. This is remarkable. This is the early 18th century. It's one of the most democratic organizations in terms of firms you've ever heard of. And it's well before any country in the world was a democracy. Why would they use this system? It's to limit the ability of the captain to abuse anyone. On the other hand, you want the captain to be able to punish individuals who act badly, who don't pull their share. So you want a captain with the power to punish, but you also want the power to remove him if most of the crew agrees. The second interesting part of this was the Constitution. There are specified laws, punishments for all crew members, specified compensation, social insurance, and a bonus system. So, for the first part, they actually had two leaders, the captain and the quartermaster. The quartermaster is in charge almost all the time. Anything except actual combat, the quartermaster is in charge, and he's also elected. The captain is only in charge during actual combat. So the captain can cultivate this, I'm crazy, I've got firecrackers in my hair thing. Whereas the quartermaster was the manager. He was actually like the CEO of the firm. The crew could remove them if needed, and the needed part is by majority rule. I'll just send out this video so you can watch it. It's pretty long. This is a video by the author of our textbook, The Invisible Hook. His name's Pete Leeson, and he is much too physically attractive to be an economist. I doubt that he's really an economist, because he's pretty. So we've talked about firms a bit. Let me skip to the code. Befriend others wisely. All adherents of the code pledge to be bound together in the brotherhood of pirates. Every member shall have an equal vote in the affairs of the moment, an equal share of provisions. Equal share of provisions. How is stuff divided up? Everybody gets one share, except the captain. How much do you think the captain got? 2 shares. The captain only got twice as much as the workers. So the head guy only gets twice as much as the workers. It's a pretty flat organization. Now, being captain does mean you get to wear the hat and the cool outfit, but it wasn't that much more money. This is a pretty equal organization. Every pirate shall obey the code. Anyone who fails shall be marooned on a desert island, left ashore with a loaf of bread or hardtack, a bottle of water, and a pistol with 1 load. So we're not going to kill you. We'll just put you on an island where no one ever goes, give you a little water and a loaf of bread, and a pistol with 1 bullet. So that when the loaf and the water run out, you can kill yourself. So it's not execution, but it's pretty close. So the punishment for violation of important parts of the code was to maroon. Captain of the ship is elected by majority. If any time a crew with sufficient evidence find their captain to be lacking in ability or offensive in nature, a new captain may be freely elected among the ship's members. The captain shall be made aware of the situation. Hey, you lost, would be a rude way to say it. Failure to follow this procedure will be deemed mutiny. Any pirate who has suffered an injury from pillaging, plundering, hijacking, swashbuckling, or other pirate duties shall receive compensation for the wound from common stock. This is insurance. They had workman's comp. 250 years before anybody else had workman's compensation, pirate firms had workman's compensation. If you got hurt being a pirate, you got paid for it. Now, merchant ships, if you got hurt, they would say, well, it's an inherently risky activity, you assumed risk. Pirates don't have that way out. They need you to help with the attack. Well, you're more likely to help with the attack if you know you get your arm cut off. You're going to get a pretty large amount of money. So loss of right arm, 800, left arm, 750, and so on. Pinky finger, nothing, life be cruel, mate. And the head, well, a dead man not be needing his money. I broke my promise, I'm sorry. So these were not legislation. This was the amounts that over time they had found were required to maximize profits. You want to get people to participate in fighting. So I'm not going to read through this, but this is some details. This is interesting. Every man shall keep his weapon, whether it be cutlass, sword, pistol, or other piece, clean at all times and ready for action. So if you're not ready to participate, you're violating the code. Here's an interesting part. If a pirate is the first to locate a prize and should find among this plunder a weapon that is better than his own, he may take it as his own. So what we could do is sit on the deck, rolling dice, playing cards, talking about how homesick we are. Or you can be up on top of the mast, and the mast moves a lot more than the ship, feeling really bad and saying, man, this sucks. I've been up here for 3 days. I haven't seen anything. Well, you're going to be down on the deck playing cards and talking, except that if you're the first one to see a ship, and we actually take that as a prize, you, the person who saw it first, get to pick any weapon. And the captain of the other ship probably has a sword that has gold and diamonds on it. It's worth hundreds of pounds. It's an enormously valuable piece. You can take that, sell it, use it. You get first pick. Captain gets second pick, and after that, people get picks in order of seniority. But the guy who saw it goes before the captain, before anyone else, and can choose any weapon on board. So everybody's up in the mast looking. They're not down on the deck playing cards. You could make a fortune by being the one who sees the other ship first. They're constantly up there looking, because this was the way to maximize profits. Everything that pirates did was calculated to, and actually had the effect of, increasing joint profits, not just payoff to individual, but collective profits. Because the more prizes we take, the more we benefit. Yes, you benefit more because you saw it first. But I benefit too because now we take more prizes. Everyone benefits from having each of the people try harder to participate. Well, so the problems that I talked about, remember, one was controlling abuse by the captain. We have democracy to do that. The second problem was to induce people to be enthusiastic about looking and fighting. Well, we have insurance if you get hurt, and if you're the first one to see it, you get the best weapon. And the third was, you want to convince the other side not to fight. Well, for that, we have the norm that you must give good quarter when asked. So those three things solve the three problems that pirates face. I'll see you on Wednesday.